All right, Big Man, today is Tuesday. It is December 7th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Chief, how are you today?
I'm a bag of shit.
Yeah,
bag of shit. I had a rough weekend, but it was a good weekend. You know, Wish Fest. So congratulations to Dan Wisher, Nick Wisher, the whole Wisher family. That's a great event, great cause. So you guys can look that up at wishforforever.org. But yeah, I had a great time with that. Dante played until 4 in the morning. So we stayed for that whole thing and then went home and then got up right the next day, went hunting. So
what time did you guys get up on Saturday to go?
I think we left Chicago by 9 o'clock. So, good little 3 hours of sleep, something like that. Yeah. Ready to go.
Oh, man. So we're going to get an all-time Chief bad brain?
I think my brain feels okay, but it's going to be one of those things where it's I'm going to get through this. It's like a person who collapses with a heart attack at the finish line of a marathon. That's how I feel.
Yeah, usually these are reserved for Snake Draft Monday. So we're getting an interesting brain here.
I was happy with my Snake Draft performance this week.
Yeah, I thought you did pretty good.
Yeah.
I really did, actually. So congratulations
Thanks
to you on that.
in advance, yeah.
So interesting today is going to be a little bit of a World News Wednesday on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And who knows how long we go. Maybe this goes two parts.
But theoretically, could be two parts. We'll see how it goes. But yeah. But yeah, I mean, the world, I don't know if you've heard about this, the world's on the brink of war again.
Well, I think one of the last world news, the last topics I got that related to this was the Australia-China thing.
Yeah, that was those. Australia's got a lot of problems, but all their problems seem to be internal right now. So they're still kind of, every once in a while you read a headline about their military buildup, but really it's just they're having crazy camps and lockdowns. They're going more hardcore on COVID than anywhere else in the world. And so that's the only news coming out of Australia right now. But in terms of geopolitical issues, it's Russia and it's Ukraine. It's like a tale as old as time. We're right back at it again, and it's escalating again. And as we sit here, we're waiting for news to come from a summit phone call, FaceTime, Zoom, whatever, between Biden and Putin, trying to get things calmed down because it's heating up, ratcheting up pretty good.
I have a thought on that, but before I express my thought, actually, I want to talk about Roman, something that's a little lighter of a topic here, but is also going to be great for you while you're harder. You see what I did there?
I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Putin could use some of that. He's got mistresses left and right, so I'm sure he'd like to last longer in bed.
Yeah, don't just be sitting there thinking about these conflicts around the world and trying to play a risk in your head. To try to last longer in bed because it doesn't work, folks. You guys know the drill by now. Roman swipes are a clinically proven way to last longer in bed. They're effective, easy to use, and they're fast-acting, but they don't require a prescription. Roman can ship swipes to you in discreet, unmarked packaging, and each swipe packet is small enough to hide in your wallet for whenever you need it. Super easy to use. Just take the swipe out of the packet, swipe it out, and let it dry. You're good to go. That's it. Go to GetRoman.com/walk. You can get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoman.com/walk. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, you have to do it. This is, what do they call it, cuffing season. You've locked down one woman for theoretically for the winter. You're going to hunker down. You want to treat her right. This is your girl for the winter. Or who knows, maybe forever.
Forever.
So just get those Roman swipes, swipe it on, let it dry. You guys know the drill.
There you go. So here's my thought. I was always under the impression that Russia and Ukraine were just always going at it in some.
Yes.
So that's why I'm
I'm
what
glad.
do you mean?
Yeah. Well, and it's just different spikes in intensity, basically. But yeah, you're right. If you Google or type into YouTube the Russia-Ukraine conflict, you're gonna get headlines from April of this year. You're gonna get them from 3 years ago. You're gonna get them from 2017. You're gonna get them big time from 2014 with Crimea. And then I can't remember exactly what episode it was, but we talked about the issues that they had in 2006, where Putin tried to poison that guy Yushchenko, and he didn't try to poison him, did poison him. The guy's fucking face almost fell off.
Has that been confirmed though?
Yeah.
that it was Putin.
I mean, Putin's poisoned a million fucking people. He does that shit all the time. His political rivals in the region and elsewhere, people who have been exiled from Russia, they're living in England, they're living other places, and poof, what do you know? They drop dead. They've killed themselves in a bathroom. Like there's been like endless supply of political hits and assassinations carried out by Putin, and Yushchenko was like one of the first, kind of like because he was a guy running for president of Ukraine. He was kind of turning his back to Russia, wanted to get Ukraine in the EU, and strategically, it's an important if you are playing a game of Risk. Ukraine's location is very important because it is like this breadbasket kind of flat plain area that militaries could sweep across. It sits on the Black Sea. It's a link to like the some of the kind of where places where Donnie would hang out, like in the Balkans and down closer towards the Middle East. And Russia has a big time Navy presence in the Black Sea. There's all kinds of oil and gas there. It's like a very strategically important part of the world, and it goes to show why Russia has always had a hard-on for Ukraine. So they annexed all of Ukraine into the Soviet Union back in like the 1920s and 30s. And this, I just did a Twisted History with Large when I was out in New York. And we talked about this issue with Russia and Ukraine back then momentarily, but it doesn't classify as a genocide. That was the topic of the show, is all these different genocides. But basically, the USSR, Russia, forced a famine on Ukrainian people and let 6 million people starve to death in the 30s. So like before World War II. So like the battles between Russia and Ukraine, surely they've had a lot in the last decade plus, but it's like it goes back like forever. Like they've had these issues with Russia and Ukraine in this Crimea area, and then just Russia and Ukraine in general being like, hey, like we're going to collectivize the farms. So it was like, the communist rule. So they're like, hey, if you own a farm, we own it now. And anybody who actually did own it, like if you had 100 acres and a couple of horses, you were seen as like someone who was an oppressor and wealthy. They snatched you up and sent you to the gulags or executed you like on the spot. And then they would put the government in control and the bureaucrats in control of these farms, and they could not produce anything. And they just ran the farms into the ground, and they couldn't produce anything, not only for the people back because they were shipping all the grains back to St. Petersburg and Moscow, and then they had nothing for the actual people living in Ukraine. They just let them starve to death. 6 million people starved to death.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of fucking people. And so if you're a Ukrainian, I think, going back over time between, then they were under the USSR, like, it was like a satellite nation, part of the USSR for a long time before they got their like real independence. But it's like, so your grandparents, if they survived that famine, they hated the Russians. Your parents and great grandparents' parents, they probably hated the Russians too from growing up under communist rule. And then now, like in the last 15 years, it's been Putin, and this is they distrust each other, and the Ukrainians really hate the Russians. And then there's other people who are in Ukraine who look at the global landscape and be like, hey, we actually want to join Russia, like get us out of Ukraine. We want to be a part of Russia. And that's kind of where all this conflict really stems from. Is Russia basically, they just invaded Crimea in 2014, never got out, and then Russia. So we'll go back to 2012. Okay, so
also for the people listening, if you're not like completely caught up with what we're talking about, I found the episode. It's on February 2nd, 2021. So this year. Okay, yeah, earlier this year. We did a two-parter called Chaos in Russia. We get into the poisoning situation. We get into Putin's alleged net worth and everything like that.
Navalny, right? Was that around the Navalny stuff?
It was a fascinating episode. So if you're interested in this one or you want more context, go back and do that one. Just Google the dog walk. Okay. Chaos in Russia.
That's good. And then going back to 2012, Putin in Russia, okay, he is up for re-election, and he gets elected. But it is thought that was like there was wild protests in Russia, if you can imagine that. That doesn't seem to be a thing as much anymore. But St. Petersburg, Moscow, all the people in Russia were like, hey, like this was a fucking rigged election, and we don't trust the results. We want Putin out. And so his approval ratings were way down. He was staying in power, but his grasp on power was not as strong as it would have been normally. And then you had in 2013, because again, Putin is weak at this time. There was a government in place in 2013, probably the guy who took over from Yushchenko, who was more of a Putin supporter. It kind of turned his back on the EU. Like, so that's always been the power play, right? So it's like you're going to go with the West and like Germany, France, Russia, United States, and be part of NATO and Western democracies, or you're going to go back towards Putin. Like that's always the push and pull of Ukraine and a lot of countries in that region, Georgia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland. They're always kind of being pulled back and forth between the West and Russia. And so at that current time, Ukraine had a Russian-leaning president, and the people ousted him. So they had widespread protests. They had another election. That guy gets out. Putin accused the United States of fomenting that unrest and those protests and trying to get that guy out. But they did get him out. And as a response, Putin was like, this is bullshit. And they had some people who were like pro-Russian separatists in Crimea, which is like this peninsula down that kind of goes into like the Black Sea off of Ukraine and like connects in with Russia. And so Putin basically, he just invades. He goes in and invades the Crimea, and it was like this major international conflict. I remember Obama getting up there being like, this is, we can't have this, blah, blah, blah. Like there's going to be consequences, and there were like sanctions and things like that. But it never really got to the point where you're going to escalate and go to war with Russia over this strip of land in Ukraine. So they just took it. It's still, I think, technically a conflicted area. Like they both countries claim it, but like Russia owns Crimea now. Like they have their troops there. They've owned it. That's basically a part of Russia now. Their citizens, there's people in Crimea, like you can get a Russian passport, you can vote in Russian elections. Like you're just part of Russian society, even though Ukraine also still like kind of claims them. So that was into 2014 is when that invasion happened. And it was like real Russian troops. It was not like some like, oh, let's have like a little quasi civil war. No, it was like Russia just straight up invaded a sovereign country. And it was like the first time we had really seen that type of policy. Obviously, like, we've had troops all over the world, but we never had the purpose of like annexing and like growing our like American empire officially. Like, so we invade Iraq, but we're never like that. Iraq's going to be the 51st state, So it was like a little bit different where Russia was changing borders, which is something that has not happened since, like I said, really since in a conflict since like World War II. On a big scale like that. Certainly not in Europe. There's been like the Yugoslavia, like these different countries break up, but in terms of one country conquering another country, that just has not happened in a long time. So as a result of this invasion of Crimea, what happens for Putin at home? His popularity skyrockets because it's like, oh, Russia finally on the front foot again, tired of getting kicked around by the United States after the Cold War ended. And so his popularity just booms. And at the same time, Russia, because he had always been big on like reindustrializing Russia, making them more of a robust economy, and oil and gas was doing very well at that time for them. So economy's booming. They're kicking around Ukraine. They're giving the middle finger to Obama and the United States, and so Putin is like wildly popular. So then he decides there's this part of eastern Ukraine called Donbass, and there's like two major cities in there, and there's Russian separatists, supposedly rebels, wanting to like be kind of just on their own, leave Ukraine and go with Russia. And so they take over, like I said, two major cities. Russia is supplying them with at least weapons and ammo and weapons systems and things like that, but there's also been a lot of reports where it's like actual Russian soldiers would go in, pretend to be Ukrainian separatists, but it's like they're just Russian soldiers. So kind of like, we would send during Vietnam, we would send U.S. Special Forces into Cambodia and Laos without dog tags. It's like, hey, we're here, but we're not here, but we're here. And so they were accused of that. And they also gave them Putin gave the rebels these highly sophisticated surface-to-air missile defense things. So they're like these rolling like kind of on a truck bed, and then they like angle up and can shoot planes out of the sky. Well, the rebels did that, and they shot a airliner out of the sky. Malaysian Airlines flight.
I think I remember that.
Flight 17. Yeah. I think there was 298 people on board, killed all of them. So then it was like you have this conflict in the Crimea, and you have these pro-Russian rebels in the eastern part of the country, and no one's really escalating. And then after that, Ukraine was like, this is fucking bullshit. You're going to shoot passenger planes out of the sky with Russian-made weapons. And so then the West started helping Ukraine, and they pushed back, and they like kind of suppressed this like rebellion in this Donbass region, eastern part of Ukraine. So now it's like it had become like the conflict never really went away, but it had been very mild. So you'd have like a spattering, a little bit of violence here and there, not the full-scale battles like we had seen earlier, 2014-15. By 2017, the conflict is really just a simmer. So France and Germany got together with Ukraine and Russia. They negotiated a ceasefire, and everything was kind of basically fine. Like it wasn't like a hot conflict zone, like I said. And then kind of out of nowhere, and there was even a prisoner exchange in 2019. So it's like things were like on the right path. Then in 2021, it escalates again out of nowhere. So I don't know what happened there. April 2021, the Donbass region again becomes like a hot conflict zone between the Russian separatist rebels and the Ukrainian. It's both like Ukrainian militia, but also Ukrainian government and Ukrainian military. They're fighting there, and Putin starts, kind of banging the drums for war at at a fever pitch, and he starts saying they're moving troops in, moving weapons in. So they now have 95,000 troops amassed on that border, which is right about the same number they had right before they invaded Crimea. So people are like, they're doing it again. They're doing it again. And then Putin is out there saying had this quote about Ukraine saying that they're the same historical and spiritual place as Russia. So it's like, we're connected. These are our people. But that sounds a lot like what Hitler was saying right before, when he was taking over Austria. It's like, well, we just need more land for our people to grow. And like they're natural Russian citizens. Like we have this shared history. They speak our language. Like they're really part of us. So Hitler used like that excuse to invade and take, annex basically Austria. He used that same excuse to invade Poland, Czechoslovakia, like that like type of language where it's like, we're the same. These are our people. They want to be with us. So there's like anybody who's like paid attention to history in the last 100 years, there's alarm bells going off over both the actions and some of the language by Putin saying, it's like this, hey, we're all the same spiritual people. We're all from the same ancestry. We're all from the same area. Why don't they just come in? We'll just bring them into Russia. And so it's become like a very contested, like hot area now, to the point where I have like a distrust of the media these days, but like now all like CBS, CNN, State Department, everybody is saying like this is like a real problem. Like we're about to go to war. So you can take that for what it's worth, but it is something where Biden is now calling Putin, trying to get something worked out. France and Germany are saying the same thing. Poland, 10 days ago, announced that they're going to be doubling the size of their military because of the threat they feel from Russia. They share that their biggest border is with Germany on one side and Russia on the other. So they're like, we have to defend ourselves. And you kind of have to. And it's like Ukraine has been, in this position with Russia for a long time, but they just don't stack up. So if it ever did turn into a war, they would have to have like the Western allies, similar to World War I, France, Germany, England, us, come in to really help them. Because if you look at them, how they stack up against Russia, and just in terms of like some statistics, right? So their defense budget in Ukraine is $9.6 billion. Russia's is a reported $69 billion. Their total population of people is 43 million. Russia's got 100 more million people. GDP of Ukraine, 164 billion. Russia, 1.7 trillion. Their military population, so it's active, inactive, all of that. Ukraine has 1.15 million. Russia has 3 million. So it's 3 times the size of the military. More money, more weapons, more tanks, more boats, more everything. So Ukraine, if Russia wanted to, and they didn't fear retaliation from the rest of of NATO and the rest of the West, Russia could squash them like a bug in 2 seconds if they wanted to.
And I mean, they have less morals towards everything, right? So
that's
like
how it seems.
like,
although I'm not up to speed on Ukrainian. You know, see if that guy, if Ukraine had the same amount of power as Russia, how they would be doing. But I don't know, but
that's
it's like, Russia doesn't.
That's what
seem,
I'm under the impression of.
I think that's probably pretty accurate. They don't seem to give a fuck about anything. Certainly Putin doesn't, because he's killed people left and right for the last 20 years, but he's never really done a full scale invasion other than Crimea of another country. But they are certainly in position to do that right now, and there will be, ramifications for those actions. So they, I shouldn't say we just did it, but like, they just had that big pipeline that's going in from Russia. Russia really is like the energy supplier for Western Europe now. They take those oil and gas pipelines, bring them right to everybody's front door, right across Poland and Germany. That was like a big policy thing that was like came out of like one of the climate things. People were like, oh, we shouldn't allow this pipeline because we're not doing the Keystone pipeline here, and everyone's like, fuck it. And then you have it's a lot of those countries that share that border that used to be satellite nations are getting nervous. Like I mentioned, Poland's trying to double the size of their military, and it just brings me back to that other podcast we talked about, whereas they had the different turnings, right? Where it's like you have the peacetime, then things start to decay a little bit, and then
I think about that more than
the crisis. And now we're in like the crisis mode. Yeah, I think about it too, and it's just like it seems like everything's pointing to that.
Now, is Poland, are they currently aligned with the Western
Big
right
time.
now? Okay,
Yeah,
so what they're worried about maybe if, say if they conquered Ukraine or whatever, and they just turn
they
around
would be
and
next.
then just hey, fuck it, let's keep the ball rolling like we did it here. We gained some confidence. We gained some, going back now.
Ukraine was a tomato can for an opponent to get right for Poland. And then I think, if you think about Polish history too, there's this old expression, and I used to work for a Polish company, where it was like if you said to a Polish guy, a person who in Poland, we'll give you $2 today or $10 on Friday, they would take the $2 today, because they just live in this reality where they're not going to make it to Friday. Okay, Germany's going to invade them. Russians going to invade them. The winter's going to kill them. They look over their shoulder that much? Yes. Really? It's like a deeply psychological thing. And that was like another thing that we could talk about, it was kind of related to that twisted history one with Large, where after World War II, and so now Poland, had been conquered by Russia. And so Russia was like, hey, like we're forming a new Polish government. If you were a business owner, an educator, a school teacher, police officer, any type of leadership position, please come forward. And, we're trying to get the right people in place to run the new Polish government. So these people show up. Hey, I owned a shoe shop. I owned a railroad. Okay, you come this way. Bang. They killed all those people. They killed anybody who they wanted, like a subservient population. They didn't want anybody who's like an actual, real, smart, natural leader. So they took like the top part of society in Poland after World War II, and the Russians either shot them or sent them to Siberia in the gulags. And that's like a real thing that happened. And they did the same thing to the Polish military. They found these like mass graves where like they had buried like 20,000 people, officers, this and that, from the Polish military after like, they had kind of Poland was like, a battleground going each way, right? Germany steamrolled on their way to Russia. Russia steamrolled Poland on their way to Germany. And it was just like, so Poland got like decimated by both sides in the same war. And Russia, when they took over, they, like you said, like they were just ruthless people, more so back then, where they would just say, hey, we're forming a government, everybody come through. And then they would just shoot or arrest or kill all those people.
I read something the other day that was very interesting that I really never thought of, that America, that we are so lucky considering our borders.
Fuck yeah, we are.
I mean,
yeah.
Could you imagine like not getting along with your person on your border like that?
Our biggest problem is that everybody wants to come here. It's just like it's not like a military invasion. People are just like, hey, like, yeah, I can have a better opportunity in America. I want to come to America, which that's how we all got here. So, but yeah, that's like, I can't imagine, like, people freak out about like the caravans coming up from Central America and Mexico. Imagine if those were tanks. Like that's what's, like we have a border crisis. Ukraine's like, fuck you, you have a border crisis, not compared to what we have going on.
Dude, I mean, just imagine if China and Russia bordered us.
I know. Yeah.
Like who knows the type of thoughts that would go through their head. It's like,
it would have been a war by now.
Oh yeah, like they definitely would have probably seen an opportunity to be like, hey, I think, in a rash decision.
Yeah. I think
certainly would have been made.
Like if China was to the south of us, be like, I think there's enough New Mexico people in there that want us, and we can go in through New Mexico.
Yeah, I think this is a great, the pants are down. Let's,
But I think that's part of this too. I think that people look around and, America's had some tough times economically, just like everybody else. And I think people are just, hey, now is the time. What fuck are they going to do? They can't get out of their own way. So, I think that is there's a little bit of a power vacuum, and I think other countries are rushing to fill it. So we'll see what happens, but it's right now, this Donbass part of Ukraine is fucked up, and it just, it's like, it kind of reminds me of, Guns of August, World War I, kind of reminds me of, World War II with some of the language from Putin. And then I have, like you said, like you think about the turnings all the time, where it's like, are we in this cycle where it's that Strauss-Howe theory where things are just, they haven't even really begun to get into full crisis mode. Like it's about to get really bad.
And then the thing I was reading, it was on Reddit, and it was just basically talking about how we have never gone down to like kind of help with the cartel problem and the issues in Mexico.
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I don't know how we would do that, but I've watched Narcos Mexico. Like we had DEA agents down there, but you're right. We never had. It seems like we spent way more resources going to Colombia. Like our people killed Pablo Escobar. Yeah, our people killed Escobar. Mm-hmm. Like the DEA and like our military, basically our government killed Escobar, not the Colombian government. So I don't know what we would do about we should do an episode on that, about the cartels.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all things considered, we're lucky that that's our big problem and not, Russia coming over with 100,000 troops.
I watched one. I think it was on Netflix. It was called, was it Cartel Land?
Okay.
It was fascinating.
I remember watching one.
Fascinating.
I remember watching one where it was like basically started at this little village in Mexico, and these guys were like, hey, we've had enough of the cartels. So they formed their own militia.
I think this might be the same one.
Okay.
This is there's vigilante groups, and there was like one in like Arizona. Is this the same one?
No.
There was one, and then I forget what
these people were in Mexico.
Yes.
Okay.
And what was it called? Auto Defenses? Was that it? No? That's the one I was... That's whatever. That's Cartel. But
okay.
Continue. Sorry.
But they had these guys, and they like focus mainly on this older guy, white hair, Mexican guy, looked like a cowboy, like just like a man's man. And he's like, enough of this shit, right? I'm gonna take it back to the cartels. And he was, had kind of protected his town, and then like his movement grew and grew, and then the documentary ends, and then they give like an update. They have the black screen, white letter update. It was like, oh yeah, the cartel killed all these people. It's like, what?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's like, what the fuck? So
I'm pretty confident that we watched the same
one.
Yes.
Okay. I can't remember. I watched it a long time ago.
Yeah. Was this the guy, Jose?
It looks very similar. Yeah.
Or maybe it was the same topic, but a different
documentary.
Yes.
Yeah. Because he did get killed, right? He's dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is dead, and
he was such a lovable guy too in that documentary.
Oh, maybe it's a different one because they said this guy died of COVID.
Oh. They look very similar. The cowboy hat, the mustache, gray.
Yeah. But then, like, it was all about how they get these like vigilante groups, and then they all turn within it. Like they get,
it's just the money.
Yeah, they get so many double agents, and then they just like turn people around, and then it's just
Well, that's why I love that one. It was just like a grassroots, like, hey, fuck the cartel, and they had this one guy, and then he eventually, like, in the ending credits was like, yeah, he got killed 2 months later. It's like, fuck. So
yeah. I wonder who. What do you think? What would you guess the percentage of drugs in America are from Mexico? Did you look that up, Harry? What would your guess be?
90 come over the border from Mexico.
90?
I bet you some come in from California coast or something like that. Maybe some come in from Canada, but I would guess the vast majority come in over the Mexican border.
Yeah, I can't find like a great number answer, but the top thing it says is that it's from the Mexican drug cartels. I don't know.
From Mexico. What'd you find, Harry?
I'm finding stuff more than 90%. That's what it's saying.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I don't even know how you stop that. How would you stop that?
How do you get it in the first place? I mean, it's like...
Well, that's
have you seen some of those borders? Like, that's crazy, dude. It's crazy. I guess, like, a lot of I was watching was when they try to sneak the people in.
Yeah. And,
like, dude, these people will be, like, living, like, under car. Like, they'll be jammed into,
it's terrible.
It's crazy.
It's terrible.
It's crazy.
Yeah. That is a real problem, too. The human trafficking getting in here, too. Because, like, those people are abused. They're, they're lied to. They have all their possessions stolen. And they're just dumped in. Like, they die, they just dump them in the desert. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah. It's like, jarring to watch.
Yeah, it really
how
is.
These people try to sneak in.
And then, but the drug thing though, like, I remember when El Chapo got arrested, like they found this tunnel that would go from what's the Tijuana into San Diego. It's like a 3-mile long tunnel, and then it like something out of a movie where it's like the pool table retracts into the ground, and there's like this underground cache of all this like millions and millions of dollars worth of drugs, and it's like that was the another contributing factor that people don't talk about that much. I think we've mentioned it on here, but as their profit margins from losing weed, like because California made it fully legal, obviously we did. A lot of states have made it fully legal, so they can't sell it at the rate that they used to. So now what do? They don't just sit there and be like, fuck, we're taking a loss. No, they start pushing fentanyl and heroin and meth and all this other, like all the harder drugs that are killing more people, and because like their profit margins took a hit from United States legalizing weed. So it seems like there's no answer. But the border thing, the other thing it always reminds me of is that the original Narcos quote from Pablo Escobar: "Plata or plomo, silver or lead, you choose." Like either we'll either make you rich or we'll fucking kill you. But those are your only two options on the table. So
that tunnel is crazy. I'm a sucker for a good tunnel.
I love a good tunnel.
Yeah,
his tunnel out of jail was an all-time tunnel too.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever see that one?
I remember seeing. I don't read into the story, but I remember seeing like news clippings.
So he had some like elaborate ladder, like kind of almost like a Shawshank, right? He gets down, and then what's waiting for him when he gets down the ladder at the end of this to get into the tunnel? A fucking dirt bike. So he's got an underground dirt bike tunnel that he rides out of jail on.
Imagine being so important that you have a crew of people to build you a tunnel.
And like we can't get like what people are always complaining about, like infrastructure, like we can't afford this, we can't afford that. I don't know, guys. El Chapo figured out a way to have like a fucking dirt bike tunnel built in no time underneath a prison, and nobody knew about it. So figure it out. Maybe we should maybe that should be the deal. Stop selling drugs. We'll hire you guys to do all of our infrastructure. Everybody wins.
I wrote a blog. It was probably in 2019 when we first started, when we first went full time, I should say. And it was about Al Capone's old house was for sale in Inglewood.
Okay.
And it had the basement. It had an escape tunnel basically to.
That's awesome.
Like the alley.
Yeah. I remember one time I was dating this girl. So I'm from St. Charles, and they used to have Al Capone's Hideaway. It was this little like restaurant hotel thing out in St. Charles, and then they had another one down in Tennessee.
I wonder how many like
little spots like that.
Yeah, and like obviously like, I mean, I'm not saying the place are bullshitting, but it's. Just
I think
so
the one
funny.
in Tennessee was legit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was like their whole thing, and like they had like art. I don't know, like the way they talked about it, and it was like right on the path. Like he would take that eventually down to Miami and
that
back.
Shit's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
I went to Dillinger's hideaway in Minocqua, Wisconsin, and it's actually legit. Like they filmed scenes in it's called Little Bohemia. It's in Minocqua, Wisconsin, and they filmed scenes from what's it called, Public Enemy.
Yep.
With Johnny Depp. They actually filmed scenes at the place.
Right there.
Yes. And it's just they like tried to raid him there, and like when it was fascinating. It was pretty cool.
That's like one of those things where it's like it's gonna be it's like kind of a cheap answer, but it's like, oh, if you can have a time machine, where would you go back? Sometimes I'm like, it might just be sweet to go back like 100 years, but be in Chicago. See how things were.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, like you walk around Wicker Park and there's this giant house, like giant on a corner on like Schiller and like maybe Hoyne. And it's like a $4 million house. But then it's like you notice like there's all these like kind of big houses always on the corner of this area. So it's like they were probably just like 8 families who lived out here and then just sold off pieces of their land. So it's like, what did this neighborhood look like in 1890 or 1910 or something like that? It was just probably had to be like wildly different. It's probably like cows and shit running around.
Yeah, I don't think you're crazy at all.
Yeah, I think it would be fascinating. Cool.
Yeah, it would be very fascinating. I also, it would be a dream guest to get some tunnel rats on from Vietnam.
Oh, that would be incredible.
That would be if anyone could help facilitate that would be great.
If you're listening, your grandpa, whoever, your dad, make it happen.
And those people were fucking hardcore, man. Those people, like, they went through some shit.
I don't know how they did that.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
That is terrifying.
That's just like you're in a different world, you get in a different state of mind. And
like, you want to talk about sacrifice?
Yes.
Like, you want to talk about like some balls? That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's like even that little scene in Forrest Gump where they're like, "Hey Gump, check out that hole," and he just dives in. I feel like there's probably a lot of people who are just like, "Hey, like this is our job. We're just driving in these holes, a couple of handguns."
Wasn't Tommy Shelby a tunneler in Peaky Blinders?
Peaky Blinders, World War I. That was a little bit different though. Like they were like trying to. Like that scene in Peaky Blinders where they like the tunnel, like their tunnelers on either side like break. Like this was like, we know those guys are down there. There could be 3 guys down there. There could be 1 guy down there. There could be like a whole platoon. And it's like, just go to Vietnam. Just go into that tunnel. Like we know the tunnel. Like they already built the tunnel. You have to go into the tunnel. That's fucked.
And you know, like right when you see someone, you know you're dead. Like it's.
Oh yeah, no way out. It's dark. Yeah. Like, have you ever been into like caves or anything like that?
We've talked about this before. I will. I went to like a cave in like maybe the Ozarks, maybe like Niagara Falls or something on vacation once. Yeah. But it wasn't like what you did. You said you'll never do. What did you do? Boy Scouts or something? You had
we had a geology class in Berkshire prep school, and there was one section of it where you had to basically you're crawling through a pipe, but it was just rock, and I don't know, like probably no wider than this desk.
Did you have width too, or was it open? You get what I'm saying?
It was completely dark.
Okay.
And you would army crawl. I can't remember how far it was. It felt like it was fucking far.
Fuck that.
And so it's one person in front of you, one person behind, just single file. You're all just army crawling. You can't even begin to like stand up or even get on your knees. It is like a full army crawl. And if that, like, I thought if I was by myself, I would have been fine, but I was freaking out about the people either in front of me or behind me freaking out. So then, like, everybody's trapped because we had a freak out. So you're just stuck underground. Like, you can't move that person. I'm getting like sick even just thinking about it.
Were people allowed to opt out of it?
I don't remember.
How old were you?
18.
So there wasn't, I mean, I wouldn't.
It was for class. Yeah. It was just like, hey, like we would, like once a week, we would go up into the woods on the mountain and we'd look for, like, it was geology. So it's like, oh, this is a mica. This is a whatever. This is a sedimentary or whatever the different types of rocks were. And then the mountain was made out of limestone. So limestone has a lot of caves and canyons. And this part of it, it was like my chest like gets tight just thinking about it.
My chest is tight for you.
Yeah.
I didn't even like going through some of those fucking McDonald's tubes.
Yeah.
Some of those got a little too fucking, a couple kids packed in there.
Yeah, fuck
Get
that.
3 kids in the slide.
Yeah.
You think you're never coming out of there.
But it's just pitch black.
Damn.
Yeah.
And we've talked at length. Like, this is, I don't know how this was this in my top ways to die draft? Worst ways?
I think so.
I think it was, yeah. And,
well, you're talking about the Thailand kids.
Yeah, and I've talked about that too. That was one of the craziest stories. And even the worst story was the guy who, I forget what it's called, the guy who got caught upside down. This is a separate story. And it's like the most terrifying thing ever. Like, he was just crawling through a cave and he, didn't know it was so deep. And he went head first and they couldn't pull him out.
Ugh.
Yeah, they couldn't pull him out, and he broke his leg, and they almost had him at some point. And
I don't remember this story.
He legitimately just had to lay there for like over 24 hours with
broken fucking leg,
blood rushing to his head, and he just died in the cave. Yeah,
Jesus Christ!
Down, like he's on the demon.
Oh my God!
Horrible, man.
Ugh, awful.
Fuck! Don't do caves, man.
I'm out on caves.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
All right. That was it. That was a fun.
Took a turn.
Yeah, it took a turn.
Yeah.
We should really do Cartel.
We absolutely should.
Yeah,
absolutely
maybe we'll do that next week.
That sounds good to me. If we don't do Ghislaine Maxwell,
there'll
probably be a lot of stuff on that next week.
That's a good point.
Yep.
So, but we'll also Thursday we're gonna do our Von Dutch. So maybe at the end we'll do some Maxwell tidbits too.
Cool.
All right then, Chief. Thank you. That's it for today, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.